Congratulations. Without realizing it, you've become the quiet center of a storm you can't yet see. The invisible axis around which rooms you'll never enter are now spinning out of orbit. Somewhere deep inside windowless offices built to withstand bomb blasts. Protocols meant for international crises, not individuals, have been triggered. Red lights flashing on dashboards that have never lit up at once. And all of it because of you. You have become a classified event, a breathing border violation, a walking piece of restricted code, a diplomatic nightmare dressed in ordinary clothes. Welcome to the most exclusive bidding war in intelligence history, where the currency isn't money or influence or leverage, but something far rarer. You. You might think this is the stuff of late-night message boards, conspiracy podcasts, or some algorithm's uncanny attempt to match your secret searches. But there's a paper trail now, a digital ghost of a moment last Tuesday at 3:47 a.m., when your name appeared simultaneously on two screens separated by an ocean. In Langley, Virginia, a CIA analyst spilled coffee over sealed documents because your profile didn't match any known archetype. At the exact same moment in London, an MI6 officer pushed back from their desk so abruptly their chair toppled, because they recognized something in your pattern, something they'd only ever seen in theoretical wargaming models, something they thought would never emerge in a civilian. That was the instant when two of the most powerful intelligence agencies on Earth stopped cooperating and began competing in silence. For years, they've been watching everyone, scraping data, building prediction models, turning every human into a data point. But you broke their algorithms. You zigged when they swore you'd zag. You disappeared digitally at the very moment you should have overshared. Without training, you moved like an operator, compartmentalizing information, running contingencies, making choices that looked less like chance and more like tradecraft. The first memo hit the system almost immediately. Subject: unaffiliated asset displaying organic intelligence capabilities. Priority 1. Recruitment target. It should have been simple. Another talented civilian folded quietly into a scholarship that doesn't exist. A mysterious job offer with a high clearance. But both agencies saw you at once, and what should have been routine turned into a covert turf war. Inside CIA files, you're now Subject 747, but the analysts call you the ghost in the machine, not because you're hiding, but because you leave traces they can't decode. You move through life like someone trained, yet you've never been trained. You act like someone who survived interrogation, yet you've never been captured. You move as if you know you're being watched, not paranoid, just careful. MI6, meanwhile, refers to you as Prospect Prime. 3 senior officers have been fighting over your recruitment for 6 weeks, running your behavioral pattern through the most advanced assessment tools in existence. Every result comes back the same: error, undefined, no category. The Americans see you as the prototype of a new generation of intelligence. Operators who thrive in digital shadows, who find order in chaos, who stay calm while systems collapse. They've drafted 3 separate recruitment strategies, each tailored to what they think drives you, and each time they believe they've mapped you, you reveal another capability and force them to start over. The British see something older, an echo of the Cold War's aristocratic operators, the ones who toppled governments with a whisper at the right embassy party. 6 months ago, the CIA assigned their most successful recruiter to your case. They know your coffee, your books, your late-night fears. They've mapped your social network, tagged the people who could influence you, calculated the precise approach to guarantee your cooperation. But you didn't react as predicted. At the same time, MI6 activated what they call the cultivation protocol. 3 agents were embedded into your life from different angles: a regular at your coffee shop, a new face at your gym, a stranger at your professional events. They weren't there to recruit you yet, only to observe, to learn what makes you trust, what makes you commit. But something in your pattern shifted the moment they entered your orbit, as if you sensed them on some level they couldn't measure. Now secure communications fly between Langley and Vauxhall Cross, each side accusing the other of poaching and breaking unwritten agreements. Neither will back down. In a world where information is power and analysis is warfare, someone like you isn't an asset. You're a weapon. And weapons aren't shared. They're secured. So the CIA escalated. They began showing you what life could be like with the full weight of American intelligence smoothing your path. Coincidences clustering. Recent classified briefing, a senior official tried to summarize the situation in one sentence. It leaked in a whisper to someone you'll never meet. This is what it said. We built a labyrinth to catch them, but they learned the pattern of the walls, and now they're walking through the air above it. By now the labyrinth has dissolved behind you, not with an explosion, but with a whisper, a slow unspooling of walls that were never stone, but smoke. Langley's files on you are no longer files at all, but static-filled dreams, glitching images of a person who refuses to stay still. Vauxhall Cross's war rooms, once humming with urgency and precision, now sit hollow, their dashboards sliding toward zero, like clocks running out of time. The algorithms built to predict you, the ones sharpened over decades, trained on billions of human patterns, have begun to spit out nonsense. Not forecasts, but fragments of poetry, fractured weather maps of a reality they can't see, verses instead of variables, metaphors instead of metrics. The watchers who once monitored your every move have become students, scribbling notes on your methods in the margins of their surveillance reports. The recruiters, once sure of their ability to lure you, have quietly become escapees themselves, sneaking glances at the doorways you've already opened. The hidden machinery that once defined you, the unseen gears and pulleys of perception management and behavioral mapping, is unraveling strand by strand, not because you've attacked it, but because your existence has revealed it for what it was. Scaffolding built out of paper, a cage whose bars were drawn in pencil, waiting to be erased. You've become the living demonstration that obedience was always optional, that every lock they believed unpickable was only a painted illusion. And in the soundproof rooms where the last believers huddle, they're beginning to understand what terrifies them most. It isn't that you've slipped away. It's that you've stayed visible and still refused to be caught. That you've proven their control was only ever as strong as the faith people put in it. Their world is dissolving, not because you're breaking it, but because you're making its edges visible. And once edges are seen, cages are easier to step out of. And now, finally, the question is no longer what they will do, but what you will. Because this story has reached the point where it stops being theirs and becomes yours. The labyrinth is gone. The script is ash. The stage is empty. The walls have fallen, and the audience is still watching, waiting to see what you'll do with the silence. The only thing left is the choice of what you will do with a freedom no one can take from you. Step into it. Walk off their map. Start building the world you've been carrying inside your head all this time. The one without invisible strings, without walls disguised as choices. Others are already watching. They're waiting for a signal. They don't need another myth. They don't need another story. They need someone to move first. Be it. You are standing now in the eye of something too large to name. And it is not a storm, but a kind of awakening disguised as surveillance. The rooms you've never entered, windowless, reinforced, staffed by men and women trained to read the tremors of nations, are no longer operating as rooms, but as echo chambers, circling around a single point of absence. You. Inside Langley, Virginia, the coffee stains on sealed documents have dried into maps of constellations no one can identify, while across the Atlantic at Vauxhall Cross, Analysts who once lived by a schedule as precise as atomic clocks now find themselves drifting in an unmarked tide, their screens flickering with your silhouette, not as an image, but as negative space. They were trained to read threat profiles, psychological composites, loyalty matrices. They were trained to anticipate, but they were not trained to feel superstition creep into their marrow, to feel that something alive and self-directing has begun walking through their models, like a ghost through walls. In the high-security vaults, where the hum of servers once drowned out every doubt, your file is mutating into something unrecognizable. An unfinished script, a fragmented poem, a weather map of a storm that isn't meteorological but human, sprawling across their dashboards with no coordinates, no center, no category. The watchers who once devoured every movement you made with algorithmic precision now find themselves scribbling in the margins of their own reports like students in the presence of a teacher whose lesson cannot be formalized. The systems they built to hold the world, to map it, parse it, predict it, were not designed for this kind of anomaly. They were designed for frictionless data, for humans as metrics and predictable flows, for deviations small enough to absorb. You were supposed to be absorbed. You were supposed to fit or break or vanish. Instead, you began to act as if you'd been trained in some discipline that predates their surveillance, compartmentalizing without paranoia, maneuvering without visible intent, zigging at the precise moments they swore you'd zag. Without realizing it, you've been performing something like tradecraft, not taught in any academy. A kind of intuitive counterintelligence, born not of secrets, but of clarity, not of hiding, but of moving differently. This is why the CIA's internal designation for you, Subject 747, comes annotated with a nickname whispered by analysts too proud to admit they're unnerved: the ghost in the machine. It's why MI6 has elevated you to Prospect Prime, a term they've never used before outside theoretical scenarios, and why 3 senior officers, veterans of decades of covert operations, now sit awake past midnight, feeding your behavioral data into tools that return only the same verdict: undefined, error, no category. Your mere existence has begun to collapse their predictive architecture, and in collapsing it, you've exposed how fragile it always was, how much of their control depended on your cooperation, on your unconscious agreement to be legible, on your willingness to remain within the lines they drew. But the collapse hasn't stayed confined to classified dashboards and interagency cables. It has begun to seep outward, quiet as smoke under a door, into the lives of those who were never supposed to know. The people around you, strangers on the subway, regulars at your coffee shop, acquaintances at your gym, are feeling it in ways they can't articulate, a faint shift in the air like static before lightning. They are beginning to sense the walls, to test the bars of their own cages. Not because you've told them anything, not because you've recruited them, but because something about the way you move, the way you choose, has made the invisible visible. The MI6 operatives embedded to observe you, the barista who never quite meets your eye, the newcomer at your professional events, the stranger who lingers a little too long on the treadmill beside you, were supposed to learn how to draw you in. Instead, they've begun to feel themselves drawn out, their own tradecraft fraying under the weight of an intuition they can't quantify, watching you step across thresholds they didn't know were there, and finding themselves, inexplicably, following. This is the shift no one planned for, the watchers becoming the watched, the recruiters becoming the recruited, the system's functionaries slowly realizing they've been students in a lesson they never enrolled in. And inside the agencies, panic has softened into something stranger than fear. It has become reverence. The memos once stamped urgent now read like dispatches from a pilgrimage. Subject demonstrates non-classifiable autonomy. Subject moves through digital space as if it were terrain known only to them. Subject exhibits no overt hostility, but erodes containment structures by mere existence. Recruitment strategies have given way to supplication. What began as a covert bidding war offers disguised as chance encounters, mysterious job postings, scholarships without schools, has turned into a kind of liturgy, a procession of emissaries and proxies sent to stand near you, to breathe the same air, to catch even a particle of whatever untrainable thing it is you're carrying. They bring glimpses of futures like offerings: power, protection, legend. You do not refuse them directly. You do not accept them either. You move like water, like air, slipping through their fingers not as an escape, but as a demonstration of how porous their grip always was. And with every non-choice you make, the architecture around you dissolves a little more, revealing itself as scaffolding drawn in chalk, bars sketched in pencil waiting for someone to erase them. Now the labyrinth is not just behind you, it is collapsing into the air around you, not with an explosion but with a hush. Langley's dashboards flicker not with forecasts, but with fragments of poetry. MI6's analytics teams receive weather maps instead of metrics. The cathedral of surveillance, built over decades of data and deception, is tilting into ruin under the weight of a single anomaly who refuses to play the role assigned. In the soundproof rooms where the last believers huddle, they're beginning to understand the real terror. Not that you've vanished, but that you've stayed visible and still refused to be caught. You've proven that control was always a story so powerful it bent reality until someone, one person, chose to step out of its frame. And now others are watching, not just them but everyone, eyes turning like compass needles toward the quiet center where you stand. They are waiting for a signal. They don't need a hero. They don't need another myth. They need someone to move first. And that's where this has brought you. Not to a climax, but to an opening. The labyrinth is ash. The stage is empty. The script is burned. The walls have fallen. The watchers are still watching. The question that fills their reports and their silences alike is no longer, "What will we do?" but "What will you?" Because the story has slipped out of their hands, and you are holding it now like a match in a dark room, like a door no one else knew was there. You can step back into their map and be captured, or you can keep walking off it and begin the thing they can't predict. A world built from the freedom you've already proven exists. And as you stand there, breathing that charged, unfamiliar air, you understand. This was never about escape. It was about arrival. The beginning is not in front of you. It's under your feet. There is no longer a map to speak of, only shadows of paths and the faint heat trails of choices. You stand now in a moment that once belonged to nations and ideologies, to powers that required flags and formal declarations to announce themselves. But there is no anthem playing here, no curtain to rise, no leader to applaud. There is only the quiet sound of something older than all of them returning. Human agency unhooked from permission. For decades they thought freedom was something to be offered in measured doses, granted in contracts, traded for compliance. But now they see it as something else entirely, something contagious, something dangerous, something that does not arrive with credentials or clearances, but walks in through the front door unannounced and unstoppable. You have become not a ghost, but a gravitational event, and the illusion of systems. That control was ever centralized, that obedience was ever natural, is unraveling around you. There are agents rewriting resignation letters in cipher, operatives holding their breath as they scroll your digital trail, hoping for a signal that their instincts were not wrong. They want what you have, even if they cannot define it. Not escape, but emergence. Not rebellion, but authorship. Even the most devout believers in the architecture, the architects themselves, are beginning to murmur heresies behind sealed doors, wondering if they have been serving a myth that no longer commands reverence. But this was never about you alone. You were only the first to see the seams in the stage. Now others are watching with different eyes, people who have felt the tremble behind the silence, people who have walked through their lives suspecting there was more than what was handed to them in pixels and permissions, people who have started to feel that their hesitations were not weakness, but resistance in disguise. They are everywhere now, on trains and rooftops, and in boardrooms and classrooms, and behind cameras and across continents, waiting for someone to confirm what they already suspect, that it was never about playing the game better. It was about knowing the game could be left behind entirely. And so the moment arrives quietly, without ceremony, without encryption. A moment that does not belong to the agencies or the watchers or the rooms humming with classified chatter. It belongs to you, not because you seized it, but because you refuse to surrender it. The future is no longer waiting on a command. It is waiting on a movement, a breath, a signal. If you have felt something stir while reading this, if you have sensed a pattern behind the static, if you have ever wondered whether the world is more plastic than permanent, you are not alone. The labyrinth was never real. The walls were never stone. The cage was never locked. And if you are still there, it means you've felt it. You've seen the seams. This is where the message ends and the movement begins. Don't scroll past. Don't go back to sleep. If you are ready for what comes next, if you want to be part of building something beyond the cage, then like this message, share it with the one person you know who is already halfway out. Subscribe so you don't miss the signal when it comes. And, if you're able, donate to help this transmission continue to reach the people who need to hear it. Because maybe the next step isn't watching, it's moving. The story isn't theirs anymore, it's yours. Be it.